Om Te Dhyan Yoga Nugata Apasyan Devatma Shaktim Sagunayar Nagunam Naha Karanani Nikilani Tani Kalatma Yuktatma Adidishtat Yekaha Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Practicing the yoga of meditation, the ancient seers of India discovered the Devatma Shaktim, the divine presence existing in everything, which, though due to the limitations of their own intellect, had been veiled to their awareness previously due to the covering power of her three gunas. Om, peace, peace, peace. For beyond that is Brahman, and there shines Brahman. May Brahman protect us, may Brahman sustain us, may Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. We meet today for our fourth and final class in this series on Sadakhya, that is the controlling power, sometimes also referred to as Sadashiva, or the combination of Shakti and Shiva, that oversees the production of all the worlds. And in a line of order called tattvas, that goes even beyond the ancient Sankhya order of 24 cosmic principles and adds on another 10 or 12, depending on which darshana, which lineage of Tantra you're looking into. But it is basically a tantric subject we're looking at for the last 3 Sundays, and this Sunday brings us to the level of studying grades of consciousness. That is, once these worlds have been produced, or we like to say projected out of the great mind, via these tattvas that we've been talking about. Remember, we looked at the 24, we looked at the 12 above them, and we took a specific look at those pure tattvas and the mixed pure and impure tattvas, and the impure tattvas. Impure tattvas is what we're playing with right now, you might say, meaning the vibration of that divine thought that Shiva and Shakti had when they came out of oneness and took on the assumption of two-ness. And the divine couple, we call that, or Shiva and Shakti. That thought has become compounded. Swamiji said that too, that there are compounds to consciousness. We know pure conscious awareness is uncompounded, and that gets given titles like Brahman and no mind, and something that's even beyond intelligence. It's beyond all triputis, like knowledge, the knower, and what's to be known, as Krishna mentions in the Gita. So that's something to be meditated upon, as I just chanted out of the Upanishads. Te Dhyan Yoga Nugata Pasyan, with using Dhyan yoga, that's the yoga of meditation, they were able to think back through this series of tattvas, because in India this teaching has been given for thousands of years and for actually many ages to the youth. I've been writing about that in God blogs the last couple of weeks. I've been writing about it to students who are asking about it. It's a subject that's coming up a lot right now, and I may flash a chart at you briefly about, taken from our recent seminar a few weeks back, that talks about gradated levels of consciousness. It's a good way of looking at it from a scientific viewpoint, because in science you're thinking about compounds and mixtures. And unfortunately, or let's say it this way, fortunately in Indian darshana or teachings, they do admit to an uncompounded reality, an entity, you might say, or an all-pervasive entity, which is always indivisible, and akshar, that is indestructible, which precedes all other levels of existence that are compounded. Anterior to life and mind is the Atman, is how the Mundaka Upanishad Rishi put that. Anterior means prior, so we'd have to think before the mind started thinking, and when it did think, all these physical tattvas came out based on subtler tattvas, based on causal seeds of thought, and that all came marching right out of divine reality in a very natural and spontaneous way, according to Tantra. Vichikirsa, we talked about that word. They don't ask why, they just say it's their divine will that this be so. It's sort of like in Sufism saying, Inshallah, God so willed it happened. It's like a very good Mahavakya in Middle Eastern thinking. In that way then, all of this came efflorescing out, or flowing out. We pause a little bit before we use the word creation, although remember last week we did have Shrishti Rahasya, the secret of creation. So we go ahead and borrow that term and use it tongue-in-cheek in Vedanta, as it were. But we're always thinking in terms of certain things not having as much substance as the ultimate reality. That's what a compound is. It's something that's been modified, added to. It's an admixture. It's a commingling of things. And we know how diverse thought is. And when a great thinker, and of course the greatest thinker of all, maybe even beyond thought, would be Divine Mother, whose birthday has been happening over and over again this last month and a half. We've had Navaratri, the 10 divine nights and days of worship of Durga, and then we had Lakshmi Puja, Kali Puja. Tomorrow's Jagadatri Puja. That's the mother of all these worlds we're talking about. And you might as well call her Sadakhya. She's that perfect first admixture of pure intelligence and pure existence, as we're talking about. And she happens to be the dynamic part of that, or at least able to turn it dynamic, where Shiva will just leave it as it is. It's always the different dynamic between the masculine and the feminine. Oh, just leave it as it is. No, let's do something about it. So that's always happening in the human context, as well as at the divine level of this divine couples we're calling Sadakhya. And we'll probably have more teachings on this. Tantra is a wide open subject, and it's rife for seminars and retreats that we will gather for. One more before the end of this year in late December, and then 3 or 4 more next year. And so probably amongst them will be some of these teachings that we can look more into Shadadva, or Sadakhya's 6 ways of providing for grades of consciousness. And beings are going to come and cut their teeth on these, is probably a good way of saying it. There are souls that, when they take on their manifestation, and maybe we won't go into such subjects as karma and samskaras and, inferior births, as Krishna mentions in the Gita and so forth. We'll just say it enough to illustrate the fact that there are beings who are not availed of their full awareness when they take on a body. For whatever reason, you could say even passing through the veil of nescience and coming into the hands of nature. It is forgetting your true nature and just manifesting yourself in Mother Nature without knowing where you came from, where you're going, who you are. It sounds familiar probably to a lot of us in the West in this day and time. So there are beings like that. And then if they can find, as I was telling someone today in a message of response, I was saying, if they can just find one teacher, one path, one mantra, and one ishtam, then you're fine. See, that's the way it's been put all the way back to Lord Kapila. It says, master this one tradition with a one-taste bowl, Zen says. You don't want to mix a lot of things into that bowl, spiritually speaking, or take another teacher or two, even if they be good teachers, because that will confuse you, because their teachings are going to be presented in a different way. You'll fall into the trap of wild fox Zen, you see, and practice too many paths and have too many ideas knocking about. But you want this one ideal, and the sooner you come to that oneness, the better for you, and the quicker you will evolve, as it were, or involve would be a better way of saying it. And then as you become masterful in that tradition, it's then that your river can flow into the ocean, or can be a confluence into other rivers. The other religious traditions can then be taken up, and that was one of Sri Ramakrishna's great secrets, is that he dedicated himself to Mother Kali. He gained her vision, and then all of this practice of the different religious traditions of the world became fructified in him. We saw that same thing happening even in our own lifetime with our founder of SRV, like Sixon, who called himself, said, I have joint citizenship in at least 4 or 5 different religious traditions of the world. I'm quoting him. He said this to us. I hold joint citizenship in at least 4 or 5 different traditions of the world. So that can be done only from the standpoint of grounding yourself, as he did with Swami Nikhilananda in the Advaita Vedanta, writing his discourse in college on Gaudapada's Karika on New Advaita Vedanta. That was all in his early life before any of the rest of this exploration, if you want to call it that, occurred to him. And he had a radio show for 3 decades or more in the spirit, where he was then interviewing all sorts of people from different religious walks and perspectives. And those are all recorded, by the way, and you can upload them to your devices and listen to some of these great talks he had with everyone from Mother Teresa to Dalai Lama, and some famous and even some rather infamous personalities got on that show. So all of that is not to digress too far away from this main point. It's that this divine ideal that we look at, which we're looking at as Sadhu Shiva, is in charge. It's just not that Devatma Shaktim, it's that invisible, unseen presence. Hate to call him, her, an energy, because then you might start confusing it, as people did with prana. Life force. Krishna says in the Gita, that's just one of my bodies, a lower body. That's a life force by which everything's upheld, but I have a supreme form. So that confusion shouldn't be taking place. Also, probably wouldn't want to confuse it later on, or cover it or forget it by calling it electric or kinetic energy, like material sciences has done. But basically you want to keep that connection with it being a primal energy, if you're going to use the word energy with a capital E. So that's why we come to these teachings on a beautiful holy day, as is happening, I think, today in India and tomorrow here where we live in America, in Hawaii, about the Divine Mother of the Universe, Jagadhatri. In fact, you can even sing to her a little bit in honor of her. Jaya Jagadambe Site Radhe Gauri Durge Namo Namo Jaya Jagadambe Site Radhe Gauri Durge Namo Namo Jaya Jagadambe Site Radhe Gauri Durge Namo Namo Jaya Jagadambe Site Radhe Gauri Durge Namo Namo. And that hymn to the Divine Mother rolls on and on, beautifully orchestrated on some of the Jama music CDs. I know CDs, I'm using old wordage and language there, but that also can be uploaded to your devices through various ways, and you can sing that to her. Jaya Jagadambe Site Radhe Gauri Durge Namo Namo. It holds Sita and Radhe, the Vaishnava ideals of Divine Mother. It holds Gauri and Durga, the Shaivite and Vedanta images of Divine Mother. And it pretty much classes us under Jagadambe, the mother of all these worlds. So that's what we're speaking about when we look at all these different worlds. Tattvas, if you want to call it that, because they're compounds of consciousness without, with the Atman behind them, but not in them, you might say. But the conscious beings who come to sport in the fields of the Lord, or to visit the rooms in the chamber of my Father's mansion, however you want to say that in whatever religion, they use these as a basis to find themselves back to the source. If they should venture out into this sportive play, and hopefully they can keep it a play called Leela, and not fall into that world bewitching Maya, see, that is kind of the risk at entering into the realms of name and form and time and space based in causation or causality, karma. And all these things began to occur to them, as Lord Vashishta has said in his teachings, in Yoga Vashishta, is that some beings just manifest once. They see, they play, and they return straight back to Brahman, straight back to Paramashiva in this tradition. They merge back in right away without any karmas, so they don't act in such a way in that one lifetime that they will create any karmas that will pull them back again. It's like one of the most ancient teachings all the way back that was given to the early avatar, Ramchandra, by Lord Vashishta. He said others then, they come in, and so the Videha Muktis and the Jivan Muktis, they don't create any karma by this discursive thought that's going on, that's potential to them. And they just live in that consciousness like we saw Sri Ramakrishna doing. But then other souls will begin to visit these other worlds. They'll get drawn into them. They want to explore. They have a kind of wanderlust, you might say, in them, and they want to see everything that this divine couple, Sadashiva, hopefully they keep that ideal in mind, as I was saying, as they descend into the world of evolution, these different tattvas and everything. So last week we were saying, and before we enter into a little study about grades of consciousness that show up as these beings who are the conscious side of divine manifestation. They're the children of Sadakhya, you might say, children of the Lord, because there are just so many, and this world is a good example of beings who don't hold a spiritual ideal. Whatever you want to say about that, don't believe in a divine entity. That's by the millions we're talking. So if you feel like the odd man out, you shouldn't at the same time feel like the Lone Ranger, as we used to say, because you're in that rare and precious company that holds an ideal and has deep knowledge on it. And you're studying that deep knowledge when you look into Sadakhya and its 6 ways of realizing Brahmajnan, which was the original title of this class, which we looked at 3 classes ago, 4 Sundays ago. And we will look at again, as I'm saying. But in the midst of, at the end of the class last week, we were looking at why these great beings keep this principle that Sadakhya teaches in the world. Like some of these great souls, their purpose for coming down, out from immersion in Brahman is to help souls, help other souls. We know those words go like Bodhisattva in Buddhism and Jivan Mukta and the Jivan Muktas in Hinduism. These souls that have a directive from the Divine Mother to take on these tattvas and realize as they do that they're all the manifestation of Shiva and Shakti. So there's no fear here, there's no limitation for them. They run open-armed into this diverse manifestation that's going on, always keeping their mind on the highest entity as they do. And that's their secret. Like I said, one path, one guru, one mantra, one ideal has held them in good stead for many lifetimes. So you want to look at my writings next week on the ASR, Ashram of the Subtle Realms website that we have. If you're a member, you look at that, you'll find what God blog called backtracking and catch up. Backtracking and catching up. That's what most people are doing here. Since they're not raised in these traditions, then when they get here, if they happen to be so fortunate as to come upon a guru and a path and a mantra and so forth, and they can stick to one path and dig one deep well and strike water, as we say in Vedanta, then that's the last lifetime separate from their true nature that they'll ever have. If they're ever born again, it will be in knowledge of their true nature, like we see our great gurus and like we see the seers and like we see the avatars. It's all just very, very easy and simple for them. If they suffer at all, it's for you, not for themselves. They have no fear of taking on a body or giving it up. Holy Mother used to say that everyone's in abject fear about death. But what does a Jnani fear about embodiment or dying? He has no fear because he knows he's not the body. Not only is that knowledge there, he actually knows he's the eternally existent soul. So there's 2 levels of that. You can say, I'm not the body, and go neti neti. But then you can also say iti iti, but what I am is that Brahman. What I am is that Atman. What I am is that Jivan Mukta. And what I am is that Bodhisattva. And then from that standpoint, you're home free. You have a backstage pass. A backstage pass would be going back to see Divine Mother, whom we just sang to. See, I can always, as Holy Mother said, I can always retreat from this world, close my eyes, go into deep meditation, and then take out the jewel of my true self and admire it and adore it in private. And then I can put that back away and I can come back out and do my work in the world. Very difficult to hold both of those at the same time, she admitted. As you go into Brahman, the world disappears. You go into the world, have you noticed? Brahman kind of disappears on you. So what's in between the world and Brahman is that ideal, your Sadashiva, your Sadakhya, your Ishvara, your Guru in human form. Those things keep you in good stead as you play in the fields of the Lord or swim in the ocean of consciousness, where you should be diving deep all the time. So with a little bit of musical intro to the birthday of Divine Mother called Jagadatri, and this hymn Jagadambe, because Amba is that 8-armed form of Durga. So with that said, we should pick up where we left off quickly so that we can get to the study of the grades of consciousness in this final class before our time expires. So let's look back at where we were interrupted by time, which is often the case, last week. You can see there we were looking at the 4 padas of Shiva, and this is a very good teaching for Sadakhya, because why does, it's almost a moot question to say why does. You start with why, and it's not going to really take you very deep, but it's rather natural for the questioning human mind to ask a question based on why. But basically, here you could say, it's not so much why, but it's when will this happen to us? And the answer is, it's always happening. These great souls are here on the scene. All we have to do is find them and open our hearts and minds to them. And as I said, begin with those sets of ones. Guru, path, mantra, ideal. And then approach these wise teachers and learn from them. Utistata jagrata prapya varani bodhata. Arise, awake, stop not till the goals reached. Approach those divine preceptors and learn from them. Why? Because sharp as a razor's edge is the spiritual path and difficult to navigate. One of Swami Vivekananda's favorite slokas out of the Upanishads. So that's what they're doing, and they find ready compliance with Sadakhya, with Sadashiva and the hidden Shakti, Devatma Shaktim. And we already looked at that. If you go looking, you'll find these 4 padas. Jnanapada, you'll have philosophical systems available to you. Hopefully you won't be playing catch up and backtrack when you do that. If that's what you have to do, like the student told me today, well, what else? What else can be done at that point? You have to play catch up and backtrack. Backtrack means karma. Catch up means get yourself settled in a spiritual path and start learning again. Start remembering that this wisdom lies within you. Quicker you can remember that, the better for you and for everyone. So it is really pretty much a matter of forgetfulness and remembering in our traditions. It's not such a matter of sin, go to hell, and I can't get redeemed, or I can only get redeemed by a Savior. You have to just remember that that wisdom is always within you, and that thou art that. You are one with the Lord. And the greatest authority of that will be the mother of the Lord. See, the Shakti of Shiva to tell you this and wake you up. I feel like I've been awake for thousands of aeons, Ram Prasad sings in his songs. I've put the veil of sleep and waking to sleep forever. So he's like done a one-upmanship on Jagrat and Sushupti. He said, I put the veils of conventional waking and dreaming to sleep forever. And now I'm awake in the insomnia of yoga. I feel like I've been awake for countless aeons, you see. So this is how a person feels when they come upon these padas and have to cut their teeth on them. Or they have to find out that they didn't come out of the earth as some animal or some one-celled being and evolve over millions of years, but they're actually always that one consciousness out of which all of that evolved. And they were just misidentifying themselves with the wrong side. They were identifying with nature as a show rather than the self as a reality. So this will be taught to you right away in the Jnanapada, and the Yogapada will encourage you to practice it because you can hear the truth, but you need to then roll it over in your mind, and then you need to realize it. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, it's called in our tradition. The 3 punches that put ignorance to the mat for all time. Charyapada we looked at, qualification and desires. That is, hopefully you'll come to the teacher. You'll come to the teacher and ready. See, many of us just kind of were blindsided. We had an experience of truth, probably from our good karmas from the past, because it's all not backtracking with no help. Mother's always trying to remind us. So you get an inkling that before I go to that great teacher, I must be qualified, and I must have my worldly responsibilities together. That's what duties mean. Duties can become the scorching midday sun, which burns the very vitals of humanity, to quote Vivekananda. It's necessary for a while, but it can become an evil. So you have to get those duties together, then approach the wise teachings. Hopefully you have some qualifications so that when they start speaking, you'll understand it right away. And that would be a soul that's free of having to backtrack or catch up later. You remember it right away because of your divine memory. But if the society and the physical science and politics and the violence of war have all conditioned your mind to think otherwise, then there's going to be a lot of backtracking to do and a lot of catch-up and a lot of purification. When I say qualification, that's not necessarily purification. That's over here with some spiritual disciplines. But qualification means I've heard and I believe. It's a matter of faith, really. And it's not just belief. Brahman is beyond mere belief. It's a reality without a second. So it's a matter of absolute faith that existence exists and that thou art that. That might be 2 steps, but people are nonetheless willing to take those steps. And they have divine access too. So Kriyapada means these divine and dharmic activities are going on which will purify themselves at the level of activity, like say karmas. It's a word that causes some people to wince, karma, But it's actually, according to Swami Vivekananda and Swami Abhedananda and some of the followers and direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, says that when you understand the law of karma, that's what's going to free you. But if you stay under the thumb of the Savior, that doesn't necessarily save you or enlighten you. It's when you find out that you have karmas that you yourself can undo because you did them. That's the higher law in Indian Dharma. And then you become your own savior. Because in the end, everyone has to. I mean, you can say, I can go to Jesus and have him save me, but he looks at you and says, well, you're not qualified yet to be saved. I can tell you how to save yourself, but you won't listen, you see. What, you want me to do it for you? It'll happen. Here, let me touch you on the head, you see. And it'll happen for a little while, you'll feel great. But then that will go away, and you'll find out that you have to find how to touch your own self, you see. You have to purify your own karmas and make yourself in the image of the Lord. It doesn't say, come and I'll make you the image of the Lord. He said, come and I'll cut you in the image of the Lord. And come with me and I'll make you fishers of men after that. So all of this is very well expressed and explained in Indian Dharma so that you fill in those levels in a tradition that if you studied, or let's say if you didn't study or didn't practice, because there's lots of non-practicing Jews and non-practicing Christians and non-practicing Hindus, if you didn't do this charya, kriya, combination of padas, then it's not going to have that transforming effect on you that you're looking for. Find yourself back in the next lifetime trying to crack the same old nut you've been doing for a multitude of lifetimes, they say. We looked at that last week just as a quick repeat of the 4 padas and how important they are. Remember, keep them in relation to Sadakhya, how these are being kept there by Shiva and Shakti for you, so that when you come upon a great teacher, like we came upon Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, peace and blessings be upon him, then we had pada right there in front of us. We had Gyanapada, we had Yogapada, and we were swiftly getting Charyapada and Kriyapada because of his presence, because he was there as a manifestation, direct disciple of Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi, and was giving us that one mantra we needed and giving us those jnana teachings that we were looking for, that made sense out of existence. So that's what's meant by these padas are waiting for you to discover. You just have to put forth a little effort and search for them. And you'll have two great helpers in this, actually 4, sometimes 5. We looked at those already, but here in this particular tradition of Shaivism, they call Lord Shiva's 2 parigraha shaktis. That is, they give you gifts. We know the teaching about parigraha, non-gifts giving, so that's, of course, in the 8-limbed yoga, one of the yamas and niyamas, but basically when they use this in Tantra, it says they're the ones that are giving these gifts through Lord Shiva's presence. And that's Bindu Shakti and Maya Shakti. A quote out of the Tantras explains that. The 2 powers of Shiva cause and oversee all the worlds of forms in time and space and constitute the materials of the universe. The material of the universe are these tattvas that Sadashiva has produced. Remember, we called them last week also Drovya Shakti. They're aware of the fact and are capable of thinking and turning things solid. That's what they do. They usher from potential from the formless into the realm of form and make it concretized. And they'll do that with worlds, and they'll do that with beings. And so these beings, as we get to them, would be very well served to have Charyapada and Kriyapada, that is, have their duties and responsibilities in hand, and have their spiritual disciplines qualified. What was it? Home of food, home of service, home of truth. That's how Swami Vivekananda set up the whole Ramakrishna order. It's an ancient scripture, ancient teaching in India. The whole Ramakrishna order is now a reflection of that. Home of food, home of learning, home of truth. And he wanted those done in order of souls. So that's what we're saying here, is that that's how you satisfy certain things that are upon you, like feeding people. You see, if you have the great boon of feeding people, then you've already got the home of food. And you're not even worried about who's going to pay for the food. So Swamiji said, we can't help you. You start a home of food, you have to do it yourself. You have to pay for the food yourself. You have to get the food, you have to cook it. This is your discipline to do. And the good karma that comes from it is actually knowing that you're feeding God in human form. So this is going to take you 5 years to qualify for that. The 5-year period was upon the Ramakrishna order because of Swami Vivekananda's teachings. So after 5 years of service, feeding people, feeding the hungry, to give them strength so that they could begin to learn. Not just go back to the same old worldly subjects, but begin to learn religious and philosophical topics, like the darshanas of India, because India had forgotten a lot of that when Swamiji was there on the scene in India. He got the idea to bring back the 3 homes from watching the Indian masses suffer. And then he came upon this plan and brought it back into operation. It's very, very beautiful that now we can look back and look at India remaking itself due to the efforts of an ancient seer who took a modern form in Swami Vivekananda. That's being done right before our eyes. And the success of the whole thing is based on these 2 Shaktis, Bindu and Maya Shakti. Those are those 2 auspicious Shaktis that will help in everything. Give abundance and give wisdom, basically, Bindu and Maya, used in the tantric sense. To finish up this chart so that we can look at the gradations of consciousness, then there at his knees, you see Lord Shiva's 5 essential functions. And those are very beautiful. These words alone, we know the first 3 at the bottoms, Srishti, Sthiti, and Samhara. Often in the tradition they call that Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya. Laya means dissolution. So projection, sustenance, and dissolution are in Shiva's power. See? So what's been projected by Lord Brahma and sustained by Lord Vishnu will go back into its full cycle into dissolution by the power of Lord Shiva. And so that's why beings go to him when they want to overcome death, when they want to transcend time, when they want to get beyond cause and effect, when they want to transform themselves via a practice. Because when Brahma projects everything, I'm enjoying this, I'm amazed at this. But when Vishnu sustains it, everyone gets into the mode of, I'm enjoying this. I hope it goes on forever. May the sun god give me a numerous flood of days, as the Upanishad says. May I have numerous flood of days in this sunshine of preservation that Vishnu represents. But when that cycle's coming to the end, when one's life's coming to the end, when birth, growth, disease, old age, and death become fructified in their cycle, then people start thinking, Lord Shiva, save me and dissolve me back into my source, you see. So those first 3 are well known in Indian darshanas, in all Indian darshanas. But Tantra tops them off with these 2 beautiful qualifications, beautiful teachings or qualities. Tirodhana, self-limitation, and anugraha, self-expression. So this is where Shiva himself will want you to cut yourself in the higher image. The teachers will illustrate that. They'll say, I've given you the truth, now you walk the path. That would be a true teacher that would say that. The way Swami Vivekananda put that was that teachers ruin everything by thinking that they teach. They should just give the teaching, stand out of the way, and let the student walk the path. You've given them the truth. Now they should know it, and they should get these other 2 padas of Lord Shiva and fructify, come to a full maturation in their spiritual path, and join the knowers of Brahman. Until you can know join the knowers of Brahman, take the teachings of your guru and focus on the tradition. Learn more and more, expand more and more. In these 3, you might say. It's all there. In Tantra, it's all there for expression, divine expression. So self-limitation has come upon it, hasn't it? And I wish I had more time to go into self-limitation in terms of malas and how imperfections are seen in Tantra as things that the soul brings with it and drops during life in order to help it realize God. It's sort of like people are running and jogging to get fit. Then you see them running with weights on their arms, and holding weights, you see. Because when they put those weights off, then all of a sudden it's very easy to run. That's sort of like a mala, and Tantra is. The soul brings an imperfection with it as a weight that it consciously brought to carry. And during life, because it knows that it's going to be a difficult time to see Shiva here in this world. So during life in its practice, all of a sudden it'll drop this weight and it'll seem a lot easier to see Shiva and perceive Shiva and be Shiva. Yeah. Shivaham, Shivaham is a beautiful hymn by Shankara. Na mrityur, na shanka, na me jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata majanma. I have no father, I have no mother. I have no death because I was never born. I'm not the body. Chidananda rupaha, Shivaham, Shivaham. So drop those weights that you took on yourself. So you can look at that in 2 ways. You brought it because you couldn't be free of it, and that's moving more towards the morality, immorality side of things. Or you can look at it that I brought it on purpose, because when I drop it, I can burn away 1,000 sins, sins, like a pile of cotton when you put a match to it. Poof, just like that, it goes up in flames. So that's the way they look at sins or imperfections or limitations, self-limitation in Tantra. And it's very freeing. It goes in hand with the teachings of sublimation. Like a monk goes to Sri Ramakrishna, how do I get rid of lust? He says, increase it. What, sir? What do you mean by that? I'm a monk, and so forth. I mean, increase it means lust after God. Turn it in a positive direction. If you have anger, be angry that you haven't realized God. If you have jealousy for another person, be jealous that they've realized God and you haven't. So this is the tantric turn to things that people that people like about the path, that particular darshana. Of course, they have to be very sincere when they practice it, and because insincerity is never a good thing. But at the same time, this is called sublimation of desires, and it's also true here at the level of limitations. They're self-imposed limitations. You took on the body. All your parents said was let's have children. And then what the Lord and Mother said was, be sure you want to do that. But then you took it on and decided to take on the body and have the experiences and all that. And they provided for you all the necessary things, but then you ignored them. What's the matter with that picture? See? And what's the matter with you that you ended up suffering instead of in bliss? That you ended up assuming that you can't get beyond your own limitations when you yourself put them there. See? Be like everyone's born says, before I get born, I'm going to put a couple important people in my life. See? Like I'll be born at the time of Ramakrishna, or I'll be born at the time of Lord Buddha, or I'll be born at the time when Jesus is walking the earth. I think I'll do that consciously. So these are lovers of God who know that this is about to happen. Ishvara kotis and vibhutis and various manifestations and gradations of soul. Probably a good segue to get into that now. So they're going to put themselves in the way of such teachings and such beings. Or maybe we should put that sometimes in the opposite way. You're going to make sure that they're in the way of you. See? So when you're running off half-cocked and about to do some blasphemous act, or some unthought, untoward thing, that you'll run right into them. They'll say, you sure you want to do that? Because the best friend is the one who warns you in time, Holy Mother says, not one who says afterwards, see, I told you so. So these are all, I'm warning you in time. This is not I told you so kind of stuff. This is not backtracking and having to catch up later. This is like, you've got the truth. Make yourself into the image of God by accepting and realizing that truth, and do it right now. There's no better time for it. And the whole thing from that Sadakhya is all about and pointing to is anugraha. It's all an expression of the Lord, or the Lord and Mother of the universe. It's all their expression. And you'll notice that even Maya has a place in the 12 upper tattvas, remember? The origin of things that veil, that deceive, that cover, that distort, has an origin. And notice that that's the last of the pure, impure tattvas at that level of spandhas. If you go beyond Maya, all of a sudden you get to the higher knowledge, and then you get to Sadashiva and Ishvara, and that's the pure order, the purest of all orders there. That would be like you having a vision of the Lord and going to be at the right hand of the Lord after you drop the form. It's like I say, that direct pass to divine inheritance, to divine atmosphere, to divine location. So that's all aided very much by knowing that this is all self-expression, even that Maya. And that's why Sri Ramakrishna said that poison exists in the snake, but the snake doesn't suffer by it. But don't get bit by it yourself, because then you'll suffer and die. So he means that all Maya, everything has to have a primordial locus. It has to have an eternal foundation. It has to have an undying substratum, like a dancer needs a stage. Or like planets need the ether. So it has to have that foundation and everything. So if you're basing everything on that bedrock and the sand, you're not building your house on sand anymore, is how it was put later, then you have that secret of self-expression, anugraha, in your mind. You know, it can also be an intuition in some people. Not all people are proficient at non-dual wisdom, higher wisdom, and so that, but they have this devotion and this faith in them that gives them a divine intuition, and so they just go toward the goal, even if they're blindfolded. See, you should have that kind of faith. Let's give blind faith a different definition now. It means self-expression. It means that all of this is in the Lord, and the Lord is in all of this. And I'm a part of that understanding and that picture. So self-limitation also comes about when we look at these lower grades of consciousness, which let's do right now. Maybe I should read the last quote here. Shiva has 5 functions to perform through his Shaktis. He is Satya Sankalpa and Aptakama. So all his Sankalpas are pure. Because obviously he's engaging also, because he's helping project all these worlds through the aid of his Shakti, right? That's Sadashiva function. But beyond Sadashiva is going to be Ishvara, Shiva and Shakti, and then Paramashiva. These are, pure, the purest of all levels. So he's Satya Sankalpa. What's Aptakama mean? That's free of all desires. It doesn't have any desires. It doesn't produce the worlds. Project the worlds, create the worlds, or any of that with any desire for himself. His compassion and empathy is for all these beings that are coming along. Because they have it in them. See, they have this problem of self-limitation in it, which can become a great aid. They have this self-expression idea in them, but it hasn't been fully realized yet. Call that root ignorance if you want, or call that waking up. We'll look at it from the bottom up here and let's finish this quote. He makes the world evolve so that the individual souls can be released through the removal of their impurities. So worlds are projected. Sadakhya is there to oversee them, brings everything out of its formless potential into form. And then it sits there observing them as all these beings funnel through, filter through these worlds. And that's why, what do you mean, keeps these worlds and makes them evolve? He makes sure the potters are in them so that people, when they want to be free, can go to these paths, can take these teachers, can hear these teachings, can repeat these mantras, and can have an ideal. See, that's all built into the package. The more you realize that, the more grateful you become. You might have got initiated by a teacher, and if it was a true teacher and it was a proper initiation, traditionally speaking, it might take you years to look back and be grateful for that moment. See, when you had that mantra diksha in this lifetime. How Holy Mother was to say later that, that was your last lifetime when that happened to you. But you might have spent years since that initiation thinking, I probably still have karmas, I probably still have limitations, I probably still am not pure. But you should have been thinking automatically that when as soon as he gave him the mantra, I was free. My mind needed to catch up with it, so how can I stiffen the process of the mind's understanding? Well, I'm going to have to go looking for higher teachings. I'm going to have to inquire of my teacher. I'm going to have to intensify my practice of mantra. I'm going to have to try and understand the nature of non-duality and formlessness. I'm going to have to get rid of my fears and doubts, as we were talking yesterday at satsang about with the group of us that gathered online. So you can see how a quote like this is rife with potential and profundity. Let's look then at the grades of consciousness so that we make sure we have enough time to cover it. Because I also wanted to look at the kanchukas, but that's going to have to be saved for another, because it fits very well into this idea of self-limitation and self-expression. But we can save that for another series of classes or seminar or retreat. So there you see this chart with this divine trio here. It's a good image that we could use for Sadakhya, and their fortuitous partner there, which is Ganesha, making everything auspicious. Everything they touch turns to gold. Talk about the Midas touch. That's Shiva and Shakti to the nth degree. And everything's going to be turned auspicious because of that propitious power that's there in the form of Ganesha. If we want to look at this anthropomorphically. But let's start at the bottom, because I was just explaining, and I think the explanation came out pretty good, that beings will enter into the worlds lacking in discrimination and seeking to fulfill desires. And these are called malas. So you can see here the three malas are described here in Tantra: Anava, Mayika, and Karmika. And these groups of beings that you see here in ascending order, inward ascending order we should say, are under the press of these. And when they get over this one, they ascend to a deeper level of spiritual proficiency. When they get over this, they begin to graduate even deeper in their knowledge of their identity with Shiva and Shakti. And then when this one goes away, they're free. So this is how Tantra explains this idea of self-limitation and self-expression, and the idea of malas. So mala can be spelled M-A-L-A, and it can be spelled M-A-A-L-A, and one of them means, the beads that you're doing and recitation of the mantra, japa mala, and the other one can mean these imperfections that are in Tantra not looked at as a block mark on your soul. They're looked at as something which is to be overcome, and then experience the freedom of that. Not so much like we'd say, I'm a good boy now. You see, I'm not a sinner anymore, because you never were a sinner, and you never were good nor bad. The soul doesn't have those attributes in it. It's always non-dual and perfect. Be thee perfect is how Christ put that. So quit thinking yourself as a sinner, and quit trying to be good. Go to heaven. Because good is a gold chain and bad is an iron chain. So both of those are dualities, and the teachers that we draw from have always talked about us getting beyond the sets of dualities because they exist in Maya, not in the self. And in nature, not in the Atman. So these first four are going to be darkness personified. Primal ignorance, connate impurity, deluding power, and obscuring force. This is the basement of Maya. So you might say, if you're looking back to the origins in Tantra to this tattva called Maya, which is a part of the pure impure order, you might say that these are the hardest things for the soul to penetrate through. And this is where the advantage goes to those who have some prior knowledge of non-duality, and they have absolute faith in Ishvara, their ideal. Then they're not going to be fall victim to thinking, I am a sinner, I am imperfect. There's something about that that doesn't ring true to me. See, so they'll be rebellious to those kinds of ideas. They'll be, I don't accept that, because their intelligence is telling them different, and probably their past karmas are involved in that. The good karmas that they've done to show them that they are on a ladder, you know, and the quicker that they see the next rung, you know, the sooner they're going to grab that and use it to inwardly involve towards the source. So it's not like somebody who has no source or who's completely under the force of being benighted by things that aren't really real. I guess the only way to say is walk into a cave that's been dark for 1,000 years, you know, and light a torch. Does it take the darkness 1,000 years to go away? It goes away immediately, Sri Ramakrishna said. So that's how these beings are looking at primal ignorance, impurity, deluding power, obscuring power, is they're not real forces. These are the real forces. Bindu and Maya Shakti. And this is the source of all those sources, Sadashiva. And it too has a source in Ishvara and in Paramashiva, Brahman, if we want to call it in our tradition. So that gives a quick explique about Anava, that those are malas, that these cross-sections of transmigrating souls who are on the path of spirituality. Remember, this is, we're leaving those lost in ignorance at this, we're parting company with them right now. There are millions of them. We're talking about Tantra saying, get a tradition and get a guru and get an ishtam and start practicing, and this is what will happen to you. And you don't look back or behind for that, not until you yourself are qualified to be able to do so and help others. So you have to get rid of your own primal ignorance, your own impurities, your own deluding power and obscuring force in your mind in order to be able to help others. Let's look at the next level of malas, Mayika. This is less of a problem than it is a production. Mayika provides mind and body. It fabricates worlds, it produces objects, and it enjoys enjoyment, encourages enjoyment. So you could see how that sounds better, doesn't it? But we just said that good's a gold chain, iron's a bad chain, and so some of these souls that you'll see when we take this chart deeper are still under the press of enjoyment. And heaven would be one of the things that they want to enjoy. So that's actually going to be a matter of self-limitation, isn't it? That there are much higher, deeper worlds to go to, much greater, boundless sense of freedom that exists in Shiva and Shakti, for instance, in liberation, in moksha, in mukti, and so forth. But they're being put off by this enjoying these levels of gradated existence, compounded existence. And just like thousands of souls on earth are holding them down, thousands of souls or more in heaven will also hold them down. This is called the ancestor cycle, Kala Chakra. Kala Chakra. Or samsara, the wheel of samsara. Then these go in a deeper direction. There are some beings then are still suffering from the mala of karmika. It limits their cognitive abilities. You might have even felt it in your lifetime as you studied. Why don't I understand this? How come I can't comprehend this? This is power of limiting of cognition that's going on that you're allowing to be there. You're not forcing the envelope on, because there are beings who pierce through that and gain great cognition and perception. And it compels the soul towards action. That is, you could see that a lot even in the devotees. Most people believe that to act is to get free. And very few know this: to cease action is already free, is already freedom. Like deep sleep is already almost sleep, almost perfection, isn't it? But there's still absence of cognizance in there. So you can see how this compelling to action mixes with limited cognition and makes the deep sleep state pragya, full of wisdom, but you're not able to bring it back with you when you come out of deep sleep into dreaming and waking. When you do see deep sleep at a higher level of intelligence with these vidyas and the presiding deities are doing, then you're coming out of deep sleep and bringing everything with you. And that's how you see Brahman, even here in this world, because you've had that experience. And that's what they're having. They're seeing Brahman in everything, as it were. The last word in spiritual life in this world is to see Brahman in everything, Sri Ramakrishna said. There might be greater words to say, but as far as this life is concerned, that means this world, that's the highest thing you can hope to attain while you're still in the body. So you can see how action then has to be turned to inaction, and form has to be turned towards realization of formlessness. And the beings at the lower level of vibration of consciousness cannot do that yet. And you can see that in terms of living beings themselves, and what they can do and what they can't do spiritually in this day and age. And they're still living by this law of merit and demerit. And it's proper that they should, because that's how people make progress, merit, demerit. And when we say that in Tantra, it's not so much just morality and immorality, which is a good thing for those people who are destroying one and acquiring the other, a good moral stance. But we've said in Vedanta again and again that you have to go beyond these dualities of morality and immorality, and beyond good and bad, to have this higher perspective and graduate your consciousness, refine your consciousness, your intelligence, and understand deeper truths. But they're still bound to samsara by this karmika mala. So there's a combination of this going on in many of these souls at the lower gradations of existence. It's a hierarchy of existence in Shaivism that we're talking about. Let's go up with it. So there you see the jivatmas. That's a word that even in Vedanta we have a good reckoning of. But in Tantra they take the jivatmas into three different kinds of beings. One of them are called vijnana kalas, or kevalans, and the second one's called pralaya kalas, or kevalas, and the third's called sakala. And all three of these kinds of jivatmas are bound by the three malas. And they need Shiva's grace through gurus, and they need to get jnana and diksha. It's a very pointed and obvious indicator of beings that need to get divine instruction. They need to take recourse to what we were just talking about here with these padas. That's why they're there in the world, so these souls can lift them out. It's like you fell in a well and somebody already thought ahead to put a rope down there for you to climb out of it with. So that's all provided for you. You just have to feel around in the dark well and find the rope and boost yourself out. So you can see up here, these are divided into A and B. Pakvamala, they're matured. Apakvamala, they're immatured. You remember Sri Ramakrishna using those two words in the Gospel of Ramakrishna, that pakvahamkara is the ripe ego, apakvahamkara is the unripe ego. So you can see that this also is used and pertains to those beings who are coming and going. the Pakvamala are matured and they will gain liberation at the time of pralaya. So at the end of a Mahayuga, when that very long cycle of time comes to an end, then these beings are matured and freed from many of these malas, and then they will naturally ascend and gain their liberation at that time. The apakvamalas are less mature, so they're going to return after pralaya. Remember, when you look at this, you're looking at a cross-section of devotees, right? Don't mistake this for spiritual people and worldly people. The worldly people are lost. They never get this wisdom. They never take a guru. They never seek for liberation. They're fine in matter. That's what they want to be. So that's a matter of naivete to think otherwise. And so what can you do? You can get yourself free and come back later to help them, but that's going to be a great task, and you have to make sure that this freedom is guaranteed. Well, that's what the Pakvamala have been working towards. They'll gain liberation after a cycle by doing their practices, by taking a path, by seeking teachers that can inform them, and by having an ideal that they want to ascend to, like Ishvara. And that's why Ishvara and the mantra is so prevalent right now to materialistic Americans, or Americans that are born into the idea of scientific materialism. When the illumined beings came over from India and Tibet and so forth, they said, well, what they need is the Ishtam and the Mala, and the mantra, you see. Ishtam and the mantra. And so that's what we've been given, so that we can deepen this process of practice. And of course, we have great teachings pertinent to that for those of us who follow Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. That this refinement and perfection can be all done in one lifetime. That's what Neo-Vedanta is telling you. So, 3 kinds of individual selves, you see. But notice the next level below the dotted line, which says influenced by Maya. So these beings are all still influenced by Maya. They're of an ashuddha, or impure, leading to pure impure level of consciousness. And that's why these mantreshvaras, says here, are still have a sense of attachment to Maya, and they're still under the control of Maya. But they can see by their very word that they're using those teachings of the gurus, and they have a mantra, mantreshvara. They're actually doing a repetition that will purify the mind and also the senses and the body as well. And will free them from these 3 kinds of imperfections called malas. It's a good thing to look back on later and see what imperfection consists of in Tantra. Rather than just say you're a sinner or something. Say, well, because I did so many things, I'm damned. But no, this is actually what's happening. Nobody's damning you. Nobody's blessing you. This is what's influencing you, is what they're saying. And you let it influence you. Now, get free of that influence. That's what finding out about karma and Maya and all of these kind of scary words are all about for us. Is that it's just like the word Maya and Mala, they have 2 different meanings, right? At least. Well, let's go above the dotted line here and keep moving inward, because then this next level of beings have freed themselves from the influence of Maya. And the first level of beings you would find in this system is called the Vidyeshwaris. Vidyeshvaras. They are like the Vidyas, which are above them. We'll look at them in a minute. They're like the Vidyas, but they hold this imperfection of being separate from Shiva. they're void of the full possession of Shiva. So, of course, this is going to be more a matter of self-limitation mixed with faith. That's why we're linking things like faith and belief and so forth to this process, so that we can understand that the more given you are to your ideal, as Sri Ramakrishna said, I gave myself 120% to my ideal, which was Mother Kali. But you try and just give yourself, 99% for now. Or if you just can manage 20%, then try and increase that by putting more of your mind on your ideal. So this is a matter of devotion and faith, and it's always aided by knowledge, by jnanam, and by meditation. That's why I started out chanting Dhyan Yoga, Nugata Upasana. Meditation and knowledge are two of these four yogas which will help beings refine their awareness, if you want to put it that way. Realize their innate intelligence. The Vidyas have done that. Let's look at them next. Highest order of the universe. They are Shiva Samya, similar to Shiva, transcend the worlds of Maya, and are free of all these malas. So here's a good goal to work for if you're a Kashmiri Shaivite, but I think basically it's across the board in all the followers of every religion of the world who want to free themselves from all sorts of malas, imperfections, limitations, false notions, mixed knowledge, a religion instead of religion, that is the opposite of religion, and all these other problems that come upon people when they enter into the world and hopefully hold on to an ideal and follow a spiritual path. That was enjoined by Lord Kapila at the very beginning. Take one tradition and follow it to the end. Dig one deep well and find water. Then you can share it with others because you know what it is. You can see by the sidebar that we're entering into the pure Shuddha. So just like we looked at impure, pure, impure, and pure with the tattvas, remember? We're also now looking at that with the beings, the grades of consciousness of living beings who are availing themselves of the tattvas under the grace of Shiva Shakti, Sadakhya. All of these things have been provided by the Lord, by the Mother, if you want to put it in an easier language to understand in English. So now we must remake ourselves in the image of the Lord by using these things that were given to us. And we have to do it in a knowledgeable way. That is, we can't just rely on belief alone. And we can't just rely on getting a mantra from a guru alone. Those kinds of things. This has to be a comprehensive effort based in comprehensive systems that are giving you instructions that are comprehensive. So when we come to this level of Vidyeshvaras and Vidyas, you'll see that the Vidyeshvaras still have and hold this slight separation from Shiva. You would say that basically there might be a residue here yet of enjoying the tattvas and wanting to still act by their own will rather than Shakale Tumaryecha. Everything happens to you by your will, Mother. By your will, Lord Shiva. So they still hold a little bit of the residue of the sense of that. I'm a doer, I'm a knower, I'm a separate being, is partly in them. Whereas in the Vidyas, that's all gone. We're Shiva-like. I always found that funny in India, going to different cities, that sometimes in a certain city you'll find a hotel called Shiva-like. And they've left the E off, so it sounds like Shiva-lik when you read it on the board. But that's basically what that is. That's saying, the Vidyas, we're the Vidyas. We're Shiva-like. We're like Shiva. We want to be identical with Shiva. And that's what Shakti would like to see. Shakti doesn't want to be having engagement and relations with people who think that they're other than divine. So she's going to help lift you up to the level of Lord Shiva and realize the truth. Just like we had Sadakhya, then now we have in this hierarchy these 6 presiding deities. And some of them are similar to what you saw in Kala. Remember back to Sadadva, that there were 6 different ways of realizing Brahmajnan. In that first chart we looked at 3 Sundays ago, we see the 7 presiding deities here being very similar to that in this particular system of Shaivism, or of Tantra. So you see Ananta, Sukshma, Shivottama, Aikanetra, Aikarudra, the Trimurti, like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and Shikendu are the 7 presiding deities that these beings are all looking to, for help. Well, just above them you could see Sadashiva. There's Sadakhya, which we've been talking about all this time. So at a deeper level of realized consciousness, these beings are all looking to climb this inner ladder and get beyond compounded consciousness to pure consciousness. And as they do, they see these deities come out of their own consciousness and show themselves. It'd be like revelation or having a vision inside of yourself. You meditate long enough, who's to say what Jesus saw in the wilderness in his meditation? Who's to say what Lord Buddha saw in his 50-day meditation under the Bo tree and so forth? What Ramakrishna saw in his 12 years of sadhana, although he was able to explain it to us some. So this is what's coming out of the woodwork, as it were, or out of the radiant darkness of Kali, of the Divine Mother, and showing itself to beings. So they reach a higher and higher level of the hierarchy of existence. And, this is where you'll find out these are the 5 highest tattvas in the chart I showed you on Kashmiri Shaivism in the Pratyabhijna school. Shiva, Shakti, Sadhava, Shiva, Ishvara, and Vidya. Do you remember them? If you can picture that chart you saw twice, once on the first Sunday, once on the second Sunday. It has a Shiva linga on them, and then it has the 12 upper tattvas, the pure and most pure of all tattvas. There they are, the highest of the set, as has been meditated upon and envisioned and explained to us in this beautiful system of Tantra that has different versions to it, different lineages in it, but nonetheless they agree on pretty much even the wordage and the names that are given to these great deities. The 5-fold pure orders. And there's where we find Paramashiva here and his 2 Shaktis, right? Above them, Bindu, the universal cause. She's been called Mahamaya or Kundalini. See up here? And then across the other auspicious Parigraha Shakti, Maya, which is the veiling, distorting power that is inherent in everything. Because it has to be admitted, and it is so by every darshana in India, that form veils formlessness. And when a form happens, then that formless reality steps to the back. Which is why Sri Ramakrishna said, the further you go towards the east, the further away you go from the west. Means the further you go towards Brahman in the formless sense, the further worlds of name and form and time and space presided over by this Shakti falls behind you, falls away. And then you're left with that vision of the ocean of pure conscious awareness and your immersion into it. That ocean of Brahman with its nectar-like swell of the Atman, into which my mind plunged like a hailstone falling into the sea, and completely left me with a sense of bliss and peace. So that's how Shankara describes it. ocean of Brahman with its nectar-like swell of the Atman into which I plunged. My mind plunged and became absolutely saturated with that pure conscious awareness. So we did find time to look at a hierarchy of existence in Shaivism. I had one other chart I was going to show you, but look back on the seminar we took together if you want to see and look at gradations of consciousness. The way we put it here, gradated compounds of consciousness. Maybe we can even leave this chart up for you after we adjourn today. And when we do adjourn, we'll be free of Sunday classes for about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think. So we're taking a little December break here around Christmas, SRVA and its staff. And so we'll have Saturday events next week, satsang, God blogs, but we won't have the Sunday class. That's why we tried to finish this Tantra series in 4 Sundays. And then we'll return before Christmas with these next series of classes and also a seminar. We will have the very last 2 days of December, isn't it? That we'll have a seminar on the teachings of Jagadambe, the teachings of Jagadatri, the teachings of the manifestation of Mother Kali in this day and age, called Sri Sharda Devi, who is the teacher of our teacher. And so we sing to her to end. Devim prasanam pranatar drihansrim yogindra pujam jugadharma patram tam sharadam Bhakti Vijnana Datrim Daya Swarupam Prananami Nicham. Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pado Padme Tvaye Shritva Pranamami Mahur Mahur Pranamami Mahur Mahur. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Hari Om